joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain, and joining me in studio today is a longtime friend of the show, Kay Carnes is joining us here today. If you've forgotten, because it's been a while since we've seen Kay, she's our herbs lady, right? In the summertime, she's always teaching us how to grow our herbs, and now that we are moving in the direction of spring, she's got some other things to talk about today, seeds, which we've been discussing a lot lately, so exciting. So Kay, before we get into all of that, introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, I'm Kay Carnes. I'm a Champaign County Master Gardener. I live out in Monticello on a little bit of acreage, and it gives me lots of time and space to play around with everything.
As a true gardener, right? Space and time, that's all we need.
Yeah.
Not even space a lot of the times.
Yeah,
They've made
yeah.
it so now we can grow up. So anywho, welcome back to the studio.
Oh, thank you.
So what'd you bring us to talk about today?
Well,
to get us in the mood for planting.
Okay, so we still are thinking about seeds and ordering seeds. And this is a seed that I, from a bean I grew last year. It's called Brinker Carrier. And it's an old heirloom, and it's called that because the Brinker family originally grew the seed. And at some point in the 50s, the offspring of the man, John Brinker, who originally started this, gave the seed to their neighbors, the Carriers. And the Carriers thought that the seed had been lost. And so they grew it out, and it is now, available commercially. And I love it because it's a pole bean, but you can use it like a snap bean as well. So if you pick them when they're young and the seed is just starting to form, you can use them like you would a regular bush bean. But these did really well for me this year. The pods are about 5 to 6 inches long, and they have about 7 or 8 seeds in them. And
flavor-wise, can you describe what they taste like?
they taste pretty much like a green bean.
Like a green bean, okay.
And then if you let them grow, of course, the seeds will dry up and the pods dry up. And then it's a very good soup bean. So it's kind of a dual purpose.
Okay.
And I picked, I was still picking beans in October this year. It was crazy. Yeah.
So you got a nice full harvest in.
Yeah. So, and the reason I talked about this, because this is a good thing to do during the winter when you don't have any, is getting the seed, shuck these. Because this is the pod when it's dried. I don't know if they can see that. So you just split it open.
This is what you do in front of the TV?
And the seed comes out. So that's something you can sit around doing. And I brought a couple of other seeds from beans because there's so many different varieties of beans, and they have a lot of different stories to them. And one of them, let's see if
so real quick, when you harvest these, they can stay in the pods until
because they're dried. I harvest them when they're dry.
Okay.
Like this, I let them dry on the plant, and then once they're dry, then I pick the pods.
Gotcha.
And just put them in a bag and keep them. Because usually, you're still busy in the garden, and you don't have time to sit around and shuck pods.
Okay. I just wondered how long they keep. That's awesome.
Oh, they keep forever. So I brought a couple seeds. I don't know. Hopefully, they can see these. This little.
They're pretty colors.
It's
kind of like a.
It's white with kind of a rose, a reddish color, and it's called Mayflower, and it's called that because the seeds came over on the Mayflower.
Wow.
Original seeds did. So that's kind of the fun, why I say all these seeds have a story to them. So like if you look into it, you can learn a little bit about history as well as about seeds. And
so you're a big seed saver.
Yes, I am. I think I have a spreadsheet where I have listed all the tomatoes and all the beans, and I looked at it the other day, and I have about 50 varieties of beans.
Wow.
But I also wanted to talk about one of the important things for me with seed saving. There's a group called Seed Savers Exchange. They're located in Decorah, Iowa, and they have a big farm there. And they have set up a seed exchange. And I brought there this year, everybody that offers seeds in this exchange gets this book. And I brought this. This is their listing of all the seeds that they have. And this year there were over 400 people that listed seed, and there were over 16,000 varieties of seed listed.
Now, who can join?
Anybody can join. You can go online to Seed Savers Exchange, and you can join. And anybody can order out of this book. You don't have to be a member to order seed. And you're actually ordering the seed from the individual that grew it.
That's just what I was going to ask. So the seeds that you save, will the buyer or potential buyers contact you? Is your name and information?
Yes, my name is
offering?
in there and what I have to offer, and my address and all my information. And there's forms in the back that you fill out to order, and you send that to the person, and then the person sends you the seed. And there's a small fee for the seed. I think it depends on the size of the seed. But, you know, that just helps the vendor or the person that's sending you the seed to pay for postage and things. They're not making a lot of money on it. But
just trying to keep those varieties out there.
But it's a really amazing organization. And on their farm, of course, they raise all these heritage varieties. And that it's not just vegetable seeds. They have trees, fruit trees, and you know, potatoes and garlic, and you name it, they grow it there. And once a year they have like a convention there. My dream is to someday go.
To someday get there to that convention. Now, how do they get the seeds? Like, for example, some of the ones you offer, how do they grow those on the farm? Do you send them to the seed
You can,
saver?
yeah,
You can?
they might.
What a neat thing. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
It takes what we all do, you know, on a small person-to-person scale and really just blows it up.
Yes, it does. And you know, there's going to be a small seed exchange in Monticello this Saturday, I think. But this is just, you know, and it's worldwide. There's several, in addition to people from the United States offering, there's offerings from 3 or 4 countries. Belgium, I think, was one, and some of the other European countries.
That's fascinating.
It
Very
is.
cool. Very cool.
It is. And it preserves these amazing different
Because you're big
varieties.
into heirloom
I am,
seeds.
and that's what these all are.
Yes. Can you explain what heirloom means for those who may not be familiar with the
Well,
term?
it's just a seed that's been around for a long time. Like I said, and they often have stories. A lot of them come from Native American sources. They've been found in caves that the Native American lives in. And a lot of them came when people immigrated from other countries. The women in particular would sew the seeds into the hems of their skirts so that when they got to customs, nobody
get their
was
seeds
But that
across.
was how they brought their seeds to this country.
Awesome. That is really cool, really cool. Thank you so much for bringing that in. Before we let you go, we've got a question that was sent in by Stephen Casper, and he wants to know when it's okay to start tomato seeds indoors in the Chicago area. So what's your tip there?
I would start probably April, maybe even late April, because they're colder. It's a colder zone. But yeah, I would start maybe in late April.
Late April, okay. Great advice. Kay, thanks so much for coming in. Great to see you back in the
Yeah,
studio.
it's good to see you.
You'll have to come back and see us.
Okay, I will.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All All right, thanks so much, Kay. And now we're going to our Skype guest. Lauren Quinn is on the line today. And Lauren, before we get into what you're going to talk about, tell us a little bit about you and what your favorite thing to do is as it relates to gardening.
Sure. So I'm Lauren Quinn. I am a sort of retired botanist and current mega houseplant lady. I started the Facebook group CU Plant People, which now has about 4,000 members, people in the Champaign-Urbana area who are meeting up virtually and in person to talk plants and swap plants and do everything plants.
Really cool group, too.
My favorite thing, I think, to answer your question, sorry, hopefully that can be edited, but my favorite thing to do gardening-wise is, of course, be in my garden during the spring and summer months, but also be inside my house and do indoor gardening all year long.
Best of both worlds, right?
Absolutely.
I like that in I call it the off season, but in the winter months, you've got the inside work to do and vice versa. So always a good time. Okay, so today we're going to be talking propagation, which is a big buzzword, especially among the new plant folks who have taken up gardening and indoor gardening during the pandemic. You know, we want more. And so propagation is a way to do that, right? A little maybe easier on the wallet. So what were you going to share with us today as it relates to propagation?
Yeah, I didn't end up with 150 plus houseplants without doing quite a bit of propagation myself. So basically, yeah, almost everything that you see as a houseplant in someone else's house or in a public area can be propagated and brought home into your house. Of course, if you're in a public area and you don't know the person whose plants you're eyeing to propagate, you always want to get permission, but you can certainly take little snips of plants and bring them home and add them to your collection. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to just snip off a piece of stem and plunk it into some water. So this is a little bit of a variegated umbrella plant, and you can see I've had it growing in water for several months now. Sorry, I got to try to line that up. And you can see it's got some nice roots growing. I'll let those go a little bit longer, probably an inch or two at least, and then pot that up into some potting soil, and then I'll have myself a brand new plant. Same thing, easy to propagate spider plants. They make these little offshoots, and once you see them growing, you can pop them off the mother plant and stick them in some water, and they make little roots for you. So that's a really easy way to propagate plants. Just by water propagation.
Is there a rule of thumb that you follow? You mentioned the root being, you wanted it to be an inch or so, or an inch longer. Is there a general rule of thumb, or does it vary from plant to plant?
I think generally people say an inch or two. A little bit longer is better, and then often I like to see a little bit of branching in the root structure before I plant them. That doesn't always happen, but it indicates that that there's going to be a little bit more structure in the roots, and that they might be a little more ready to transition to soil. So you want to avoid keeping them in the water too long, because then the roots kind of get too used to just the water medium, and when you try to transition them to soil, it can cause a little bit of stress on the new propagations.
And when you are going to make those cuttings, can you give us a little bit of guidance on perhaps where to make the cut, or how to do that, how to go about getting a nice clean cut?
Yeah, so most plants that you see as house plants, I'll grab one from behind me here. This is my neon pothos, and you can see that each leaf comes off the stem. I'll get a little bit closer up here.
Oh, we got a live cut right on TV.
Right. So not all plants grow in this fashion, but a lot of them do. So you'll see a long runner, and where the leaves come off, that's called a node. And so at each node, you'll see a leaf on one side and a little stubby root structure on the other side. So that's called an aerial root. And you won't always see them fully, poking out like that. Sometimes they're kind of nubby, and they don't look like much. But you want to get that underwater. So what I would do with this cutting is I would cut 2 or 3 nodes worth, like that. And I would clip off the bottom leaf or two so that when I put it in water, the bottom leaf isn't stuck in the water,
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I would do that. And so that's that kind of plant. Some plants don't need to have that node in order to make the root structure. And I can talk about that if you're interested. But I don't
Absolutely. Yes, please.
2 days long with this. Okay, so I think I've talked in the past about Hoyas being my favorite plants to grow, and they don't require that node exactly. They need one node above the soil, but other than that, they can grow roots from any point on the stem. And here I have, this is a mega.
Wow.
You can see I put this little net pot. It's got a lot of holes on the sides, in soil, and I just usually clip a Hoya and stick it down into the soil, moisten the soil, and then put it inside of my propagation box, which is a large Tupperware container filled with sphagnum moss that's kind of moist, and it keeps the humidity super high in here. And so over time, you'll see a lot of root growth out of the bottom of these net pots, and it sticks to the sphagnum. So these aren't all the roots. This is sphagnum mixed with the roots, but
That's incredible. So the sphagnum is in the bottom that serves as kind of, I don't want to say the medium, but well, it kind of is the medium.
Well, the medium is the soil, which is inside this pot, but then outside, I kind of keep a layer of the sphagnum moss. Maybe you can see. Kind of.
Gotcha. Very cool and practical. I love that that's something that you can just run and go pick up.
Yes.
Duty calls, always duty calls. That's all right. So tell us a little bit more about what's inside your bin there.
Well, it's pretty much all Hoyas at this point. This is a Hoya Patsiai Chiang Mai. That's this guy. This is one that I've had to reroot this a number of times. This is a Hoya rotundiflora. It's got extremely cute leaves, I feel like.
Very pretty.
And growing a million roots as well. And I've got several others. This is they call it Croniana silver, but it's been reclassified as Lacunosa silver splash or silver something, super silver. So there's just a lot of variation in the Hoyas, as we've talked about before.
Do you keep that in a, where do you keep it? Do you keep it somewhere warm? I'm really interested in this. I feel like I can get more bang for my buck if I've got a large container.
Definitely, yes, and I do. I have a germination mat that I set the whole tub on top of, and then I have it growing. I have it sitting underneath a desk, actually, and under the desk I have put a grow light, just sort of underneath, so it's kind of out of the way, but it has light and it has the warmth from the germination mat. But you don't have to go to that extent. You can just put a tub like this in a sunny window, and that should do the trick.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. I've got a question for you. This one came in from our email. And let's see here. All right. This is from Harlan and Vivian. And if you're a plant parent, you've dealt with this before. So here's the question. My wife has several houseplants in a South Bay window. We noticed several small gnat-type insects flying around that area. Could they be coming from the houseplants? And if so, how do we get rid of them? The million-dollar question. So if you want to tell them what they're perhaps seeing and maybe some tips.
Yes, so they're most likely seeing fungus gnats. They're very common plant pest in houseplants. They don't do much damage to the plants themselves, so I hesitate a little bit calling them a plant pest. They do feed on, I think the larvae feed on sort of decomposing material in the soil substrate. And then the adults come out and they fly around and mate, and the cycle continues. They are very pesky indeed. They just fly in your face and they become very annoying, but again, they don't do much damage to your plants. To get rid of them, there are a number of, you said the million-dollar question, because there's a million different sort of home remedies for these things. But I think some of the best advice is to use one of these or multiple of these yellow sticky cards. You can get these on Amazon or any place like that. You would peel off the white part here, and this is a very sticky surface. You just stick it down into your pot, and it collects the adult fungus gnats, and they just stick to this, so they can't go on with their cycle. But in addition to this, you also want to take other steps. The main thing is to let your plants dry down more than you are probably. The biggest issue is overwatering your plants, because that creates the exact right environment for these fungus gnats. So let them get a little drier, perhaps, and that'll help. But then another product you could use is something called mosquito bits. This is a material that has a biocontrol agent infused into these little nuggets. And you can either sort of spread them on the soil surface, and the material gets watered in when you water the plants, or you can put these in your watering can and kind of make a tea and let it and use that to water your plants. And eventually the bacterium that's in there will kill the fungus gnat larvae. One more possibility, if they're really out of control and you just can't stand it anymore, this is a systemic houseplant control.
That's what I use. I had to bring out the big guns a couple years ago.
It's a little bit, right? But of course, with this, you want to avoid putting those plants outside during the growing season, because they will kill any beneficial insects that come their way, and we don't want to do that. But for inside, they're fine. It's fine.
And I love that you said that they're not a real plant pest. It is a people pest, because I tell you, they fly up your nose, and if you get over there when you're watering or doing anything, and I got it when I moved my plants in over the summer, and they were too wet, and I watered. I learned my lesson, and let them dry down, because that once you start that, they're kind of hard to get a handle on.
Yes,
once they're established. And I wanted to add, what did help me as well, I don't know if you've seen these, I'm sure you have, the little tabletop machines.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It looks like a canister, but it kind of sucks them out of the air and pulls them right into the canister.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one more thing, which is a little bit outside the box like that. This is a carnivorous plant called a butterwort. And it has very sticky leaves, and so it kind of serves the same purpose as these guys, but it's a living thing. And so if you plant a bunch of these around the plants that have the worst issue with that, your fungus gnats will stick to these leaves and get digested by this plant.
Now that's cool. Are there any other plants in that family that are similar that you could?
Well, there's a bunch of carnivorous plants. I know about these for fungus gnats, but I'm guessing things like sundews and stuff would probably do the same job. I haven't grown those, so I'm not as familiar, but probably a lot of different things. Yeah.
Very cool. And what about, so we're coming into spring, just to put you on the spot a little bit, what are you looking forward to growing? I did a little poll on Facebook on See You Plant People and on Mid-American Gardener, and overwhelmingly tomatoes won as the #1, can't wait to get my hands on fruit or vegetable. So what is it for you? What are you waiting for?
Cherry tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes. Now,
Sure.
what is it about cherry tomatoes?
They're just so sweet and scrumptious, and just picking them off the vine and eating them by the handful is great. Last year I planted 2 in buckets in my backyard. I don't have a lot of, I have a flower garden, but I don't have a great space for veggies. And so I planted them in buckets, and I just didn't have enough. I need more. I need a lot more.
More cherry tomatoes. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. And we'll have to check in on your propagated plants as they're growing and see how things are going. So thank you for stopping in. Thanks, Lauren. And you may remember last spring we went to Ella's house. It was just about this time last year, and she taught us how to make maple syrup using the sugar maples that she had on her property. Well, I've got some sugar maples at my house as well, so we decided to give it a shot. And so we ordered some taps and tapped a few of the trees out at our place. So I put together a quick video to show you how that went one weekend. So here you see my husband. We've already drilled the hole in, and he is putting the taps in the tree, and it immediately started to run, which was great because we knew we had done it properly. In just a few hours, you'll see here in the next one that we had already collected that's a good 1/3, maybe almost a half gallon there of sap. As time went on throughout the day, just kept collecting more and more and more. The trees were running really good. This one was from the next morning. I emptied it about 5 in the evening, and that was the next morning when I went out. So that tree ran really well all day. Ella had the 2 roaster pans. I just have one because this is our experimental year. So dumping those in a roaster pan, just letting that water cook off of there. There you can see I'm emptying another one, and that one was totally, totally full. And now we wait. So when that finishes up and we get that nice caramel color and the consistency that we're looking for, I'll know it's ready, and I'll have to bring in a sample and show you guys how it all turned out. So wish us luck. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching and sticking with us throughout each iteration of the show. Thanks so much to today's guests, Kay and Lauren, for appearing on today. And thank you for sending in your questions, and keep that up. If you've got a question for us, send it in to yourgarden@gmail.com. You can also look for us on Facebook. Just search for Mid-American Gardener and send us a message there. And thank you so much for watching. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain, and we will see you next time. Good night.